The moment Marcus Donovan walked into my courtroom, I knew he'd never walked into a room in his life without owning it. He moved like a man who'd spent 26 years never being told no. The bailiff got a nod, not a greeting, a permission slip to exist. He spread himself across the front row like the bench belonged to him personally. His uniform was custom-tailored, pressed so sharp it could cut glass, probably cost more than Officer Rachel Chen's monthly salary. His attorney, Gerald Hutchkins, materialized beside him in a suit that screamed old money and older favors. Case number 2023, TR 4418. Chief of Police Marcus Donovan, 48 years old, cited for running a red light at Highland and 7th. The officer who'd written the ticket was Chin, 29, 6 years on the force, hands probably still shaking when she'd handed him that citation. I'd been waiting 3 years for this exact moment. When I called the case, Donovan stood slowly, deliberately, making the entire courtroom wait because making people wait was something he'd always had the power to do. Hutchkins cleared his throat. Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. Officer Chin clearly made an error in judgment. Chief Donovan's 26 years of exemplary service should carry significant weight in these proceedings. I set down my pen. Chief, is your attorney speaking for you, or do you have something to say yourself? That's when he made his first mistake. He waved Hutchkins aside like swatting a fly and stepped forward. Your Honor, I appreciate the court's time, but frankly, this is a waste of it. Officer Chin is young and experienced. She clearly didn't recognize my vehicle. I've already spoken with her supervisor about additional training. The temperature in my courtroom dropped 10 degrees. You spoke with her supervisor, I repeated, my voice flat and measured. About her need for training. Because she cited you for running a red light. Exactly. He smiled. Actually smiled. These young officers get overzealous. They don't yet understand how things work. Then explain it to me. How do things work, Chief Donovan? He leaned slightly forward, lowering his voice like we were sharing something private. Your Honor, I've been in law enforcement since before Officer Chin was born. I run this city's police department. Sometimes circumstances require immediate response. Situations where traffic laws become secondary to public safety. I'm sure a man of your experience understands. Were you responding to an emergency on the night of September 14th? A slight pause. Not exactly an emergency, but I was handling department business. At 11:45 p.m., running a red light in a personal vehicle. I don't think I need to explain the specifics of my duties to this court. And there it was. The sentence I'd been waiting for. The door opening wide. Actually, Chief, you do. You're standing in my courtroom facing a citation. Your badge does not buy you special treatment here. Were you or were you not responding to an emergency? Hutchkins was frantically trying to catch his client's eye. Donovan ignored him completely. Men who've never been challenged don't recognize the cliff until they're already falling. Your Honor, his jaw tightened. With all due respect, you're not seeing the bigger picture. Then help me see it. He glanced around the courtroom, at the gallery, at the reporters in the back row. And then, because arrogance is ultimately just insecurity wearing expensive clothes, he decided to perform. I've been police chief for 12 years. I know every judge in this building. I play golf with the mayor. I have dinner with city council members every month. I run this city's law enforcement. And everyone in the city knows that when I make a decision, it is the right decision, including decisions about when traffic laws apply to me. The courtroom went so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights humming. Even my court reporter stopped typing. I removed my glasses slowly. It's a gesture I use when I need a moment, when my anger is something I have to manage rather than express. I cleaned each lens with deliberate care while Marcus Donovan stood there in his expensive uniform, still believing he'd just won the room. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that 3 years earlier, a terrified young officer named Rachel Chin had contacted my clerk, asking in a whispered phone call whether there was any way to report corruption without going through the normal channels. The channels that Marcus Donovan controlled. She wasn't the first. She was the 7th. Over 36 months, a picture had assembled itself on my desk with the patience of something inevitable. A police chief who ran his department like a medieval kingdom. Officers who questioned him found themselves on permanent night shifts in the city's most dangerous precincts. Citizens who filed complaints suddenly discovered code violations in their homes and businesses. Evidence in cases that embarrassed Donovan had a way of going missing, not dramatically, just quietly, the way powerful men make inconvenient things disappear. But Chin was different. She'd kept records the way someone keeps records when they know they might not get another chance. Dash cam footage, audio recordings, a handwritten log of every threat, every sideways comment, every time someone above her had suggested she might want to reconsider her choices. And she'd done something else. She'd contacted the FBI. Special Agent Patricia Morrison had been building a federal case for 18 months. Corruption, abuse of power, witness intimidation, civil rights violations. A stack of charges that, laid end to end, could bury a man for a decade and a half. They'd been waiting for the right moment. So had I. I put my glasses back on. Chief Donovan, did you just inform this court that traffic laws don't apply to you because of your position? He heard the shift in my voice. Too late. I didn't mean it like, you meant exactly what you said. You believe you are above the law. Hutchkins lunged forward. Your Honor, my client is under stress. He misspoke. Your client made a sworn statement in open court. I held up one hand. He'll have the opportunity to clarify it under oath. That's when my bailiff's radio gave a single soft crackle. Right on schedule. The side doors opened, and Special Agent Morrison walked in with her credentials already visible on her belt. 3 agents behind her, positioning themselves quietly at each exit with the practiced calm of people who had done this many times before and found it easy. Donovan's face moved through an entire life in about 4 seconds. Confidence, confusion, recognition, terror. His attorney had gone the color of old paper. Chief Donovan, I said pleasantly, it appears we have some visitors. Morrison approached the bench with the unhurried ease of someone delivering paperwork that was already overdue. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption. We have a federal warrant for the arrest of Marcus Donovan on charges of corruption, abuse of authority, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. She turned to face him. Chief Donovan, you're under arrest. The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. Donovan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His attorney had taken a visible step backward, already calculating the distance between himself and catastrophe. This is insane. Donovan finally found his voice. You can't just walk in here and we can. Morrison's voice was perfectly level. 18 months of wire fraud, extortion, evidence tampering, and witness intimidation says we absolutely can. Should I keep going? I leaned forward. Chief Donovan, let me tell you something. 3 years ago, Officer Rachel Chin contacted my office. She was frightened, but she was also meticulous. She told me about the retaliation, the transfers, the threats, the way you systematically dismantled anyone who questioned you. She wasn't alone. I paused. 6 other officers told me the same story. A police chief who mistook his badge for a crown. Morrison produced handcuffs. The metallic sound cut through the room like a blade. Wait. His voice cracked down the middle. Your Honor, please. I have a family. I have a career. This will, I stood up. It's something I rarely do. When I stand, everyone in my courtroom understands that what comes next matters. You're worried about your career being destroyed. My voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. Let me tell you about careers that were already destroyed. Officer Chin, demoted after questioning your expense reports. Officer Martinez, transferred to the worst precinct in the city after filing a formal complaint. Officer Thompson, fired on fabricated charges for refusing to cover your misconduct. I let each name land. You want to talk about families? Ask Sarah Mitchell about the assault case where evidence disappeared because her attacker had donated to your campaign. Ask James Rodriguez what it cost him when his business suddenly failed 3 rounds of help inspections after he complained about your officers. Donovan's legs were visibly shaking. This hearing was recorded, I said to Morrison. Audio and video. Yes, Your Honor. Every word. Donovan's eyes moved around the room one last time, looking for the exit that didn't exist, the ally who wasn't there, the favor that wasn't coming. "You set me up," he said, barely above a whisper. "No, Chief. You set yourself up. I simply gave you the rope. You tied the knot with great enthusiasm." I sat back down. "Agent Morrison, he's yours." The handcuffs clicked closed around his wrists. Morrison began the Miranda warning in a steady, unhurried voice, and I watched Marcus Donovan's face as each right was read to him. The arrogance was simply gone, not beaten or humbled, just gone. The way of fire goes out when there's nothing left to burn. What remained was just a man. Smaller than he'd seemed an hour ago. Older. In the back row, Officer Rachelton had tears running down her face. Not grief. Not even relief, exactly. Something deeper. The specific exhaustion of someone who has been afraid for a very long time and has just been allowed to stop. Morrison finished. "Do you understand these rights as I've explained them?" Donovan nodded. Verbal response. Yes. Almost inaudible. They began moving him toward the side exit. I had one thing left to say. "Chief Donovan." He stopped. Turned. "You told this court that you run this town. That your decisions are always the right decisions. That you know every judge in this building." I held his gaze. "You were wrong about all of it. You never ran this town. The law runs this town. It ran it before you got here, and it will run it long after your name is forgotten." The door closed behind him with a sound like something being sealed permanently shut. The gallery held its silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, it broke apart into sound, reporters typing, people exhaling, a woman in the third row crying quietly. That's when Officer Chin stood up. Every head turned. She walked down the center aisle with her uniform pressed crisp and her badge catching the light, the walk of someone who had survived something and knew it. She stopped directly in front of the space where Donovan had stood. The room held its breath. She raised her right hand in a formal salute. Not a gesture of respect, a gesture of ending. A soldier's salute to a commanding officer whose command was finished, whose authority had dissolved, whose power was done. "You held this over me for 3 years. It is over now." Then she turned to me and gave one small nod. "Thank you." She walked out with her shoulders straight and her head high, and the courtroom watched her go with the reverence people reserve for things they know they're witnessing for the first and last time. Martinez waited until the room had cleared before approaching the bench. "Judge." He shook his head slowly. "That was something else." "Yes," I said. "It was." "You think he takes a plea?" "Absolutely. His attorney will negotiate hard, but the FBI has him on 18 months of documented evidence plus his own words, on camera, in open court. 7 to 15 years, depending on what else comes out of his files." Martinez whistled. His wife was in the lobby this morning. Left when she saw Morrison's team come in. That landed harder than I expected. His wife. His kids. The people who'd had no part in any of this and would spend the next decade explaining who they used to be. That's the weight that never shows up in the coverage. I gathered the case file. This paperwork would be sealed during federal proceedings, eventually made public, eventually studied in classrooms by people who hadn't been born yet. But right now I had 16 more cases on the docket. A landlord-tenant dispute. 2 DUIs. A custody hearing. The daily machinery of justice that doesn't make headlines and doesn't stop for drama. Back in my chambers, my clerk Sarah had coffee waiting. Black, no sugar. FBI wants the courtroom recording. Give it to them. Channel 7 is offering no. She left. I sat at my desk, the same oak desk I'd sat at for 23 years, buried under files that never got smaller, and I thought about Rachelton. About the phone call she'd made 3 years ago, terrified, not sure anyone would listen. About the 6 officers who'd reached out before her. About every person who does the right thing in the dark, not knowing if the light will ever come. My phone rang. Unknown number. Judge. Young woman's voice nervous. "My name is Rebecca Torres. I'm an officer in Donovan's department. I've been watching what happened. It's everywhere." A pause. "I have documentation. Things he made disappear. I've been collecting it for 8 months, but I didn't know who I could trust. You should be calling Special Agent Morrison, not me." "I know. I will. I needed to hear first that it was possible, that someone would actually listen. Officer Torres, fear is normal. Courage isn't the absence of it. Call Morrison today. Tell her everything. A long breath. Thank you, Judge. She hung up, and I sat there thinking about how many more of her were out there. Good officers watching rot spread through something they'd given their careers to. Paralyzed not by weakness, but by the very reasonable calculation that speaking up had costs and staying silent had none. Donovan's corruption wasn't just the crimes themselves. It was the silence factory he'd built around them. The atmosphere of dread that turned decent people into bystanders. Martinez knocked. Judge, the Hendersons. Give me 5 minutes. I reviewed the Henderson file. Married 12 years. 2 children. Disputes over assets and custody. The language of love turned litigious. I'd read 1,000 files that looked exactly like this one. This is the actual work of this courtroom, not the viral moments, not the dramatic confrontations that will be written about and taught in ethics courses and whispered about in law school corridors, but the quiet, grinding, necessary business of people whose lives have broken apart and who need someone to help them divide the wreckage fairly. Marriage endings, custody arrangements, property lines, the small private tragedies that never make the front page and matter more than anything that does to the people inside them. I straightened my robe and walked back out. By 5 o'clock, my voice was worn and my back ached, and I'd heard 7 more cases, including a man who had arrived visibly drunk to his own DUI hearing, which remains one of the most specifically impressive things I have witnessed in 4 decades on this bench. Martinez shut down the courtroom with his usual efficient quiet. I left through the employee exit, bypassing the news crews still stationed at the main entrance. They'd move on. There would be another story by morning. Driving home, I thought about what it actually means to hold this position. Not the power of it, the responsibility of it. Every day, people walk into my courtroom at the worst moments of their lives, and they need to believe that what happens there is fair. That the rules apply to everyone. That the person sitting behind that bench is not going to be impressed by a badge or a tailored uniform or a name casually dropped in lieu of an argument. The moment we start making exceptions, the whole thing collapses. Not spectacularly. Quietly. The way Donovan ran his department, just the gradual, invisible rot of a system where some people have learned that the rules were written for everyone else. Officer Chin walked into that courtroom today with 3 years of fear in her body and documentation in her hands, and the kind of stubborn, costly courage that doesn't get celebrated nearly enough. She didn't do it because it was safe. She did it because it was right and because someone had to, and she decided that someone was her. Tomorrow there will be more cases. More people with problems I can help solve and problems I can't. More decisions that matter to someone's life in ways they'll feel for years. But tonight, the law held. And in 43 years, I have never once stopped being grateful that it can.